It is true that on coming to himself he found that he was still within four walls. He saw La Raymie twirling his thumbs 10 feet from him, and his guards laughing and drinking in the ante-chamber. The only thing that was pleasant to him in that odious tableau, such is the instability of the human mind, was the sullen face of Grimid, for whom he had at first conceived such a hatred, and who now was all his hope. Grimid seemed to him an Antinos. It is needless to say that this transformation was visible only to the prisoner's feverish imagination. Grimid was still the same, and therefore he retained the entire confidence of his superior, La Raymie, who now relied upon him more than he did upon himself, for, as we have said, La Raymie felt at the bottom of his heart a certain weakness for Monsieur de Beaufort, and so the good La Raymie made a festivity of the little supper with his prisoner. He had but one fault: he was a gourmand. He had found the pates good, the wine excellent. Now the successor of Cromarty had promised him a pate of pheasant instead of a pate of fowl, and Chambertin wine instead of Macon. All this, set off by the presence of that excellent prince, who was so good-natured, who invented so droll tricks against Monsieur de Chavigny, and so fine jokes against Mazarin, made for La Raymie the approaching Pentecost one of the four great feasts of the year. He therefore looked forward to 6 o'clock with as much impatience as the Duke himself. Since daybreak La Raymie had been occupied with the preparations, and trusting no one but himself, he had visited personally the successor of Cromarty. The latter had surpassed himself, ornamented with Monsieur de Beaufort's coat of arms. It was empty as yet, but a pheasant and 2 partridges were lying near it. La Raymie's mouth watered, and he returned to the Duke's chamber rubbing his hands. To crown his happiness, Monsieur de Chavigny had started on a journey that morning, and in his absence La Raymie was deputy governor of the chateau. As for Grimid, he seemed more sullen than ever. In the course of the forenoon Monsieur de Beaufort had a game of tennis with La Raymie. A sign from Grimid put him on the alert. Grimid, going in advance, followed the course which they were to take in the evening. The game was played in an enclosure called the little court of the chateau, a place quite deserted except when Monsieur de Beaufort was playing, and even then the precaution seemed superfluous. The wall was so high. There were 3 gates to open before reaching the enclosure, each by a different key. When they arrived, Grimid went carelessly and sat down by a loophole in the wall, letting his legs dangle outside. It was evident that there the rope ladder was to be attached. This manoeuvre, transparent to the Duc de Beaufort, was quite unintelligible to La Raymie. The game at tennis, which, upon a sign from Grimid, Monsieur de Beaufort had consented to play, began in the afternoon. The Duke was in full strength, and beat La Raymie completely. 4 of the guards, who were constantly near the prisoner, assisted in picking up the tennis balls. When the game was over, the Duke, laughing at La Raymie for his bad play, offered these men 2 louis d'or to go and drink his health with their 4 other comrades. The guards asked permission of La Raymie, who gave it to them, but not till the evening. However, until then he had business, and the prisoner was not to be left alone. 6 o'clock came, and, although they were not to sit down to table until 7 o'clock, dinner was ready and served up. Upon a sideboard appeared the colossal pie with the Duke's arms on it, and seemingly cooked to a turn, as far as one could judge by the golden colour which illuminated the crust. The rest of the dinner was to come. Every one was impatient. La Raymie to sit down to table, the guards to go and drink, the Duke to escape. Grimid alone was calm as ever. One might have fancied that Athos had educated him with the express forethought of such a great event. There were moments when, looking at Grimid, the Duke asked himself if he was not dreaming, and if that marble figure was really at his service, and would grow animated when the moment came for action. La Raymie sent away the guards, desiring them to drink to the Duke's health, and as soon as they were gone shut all the doors, put the keys in his pocket, and showed the table to the prince with an air that signified, "Whenever my lord pleases." The prince looked at Grimaud. Grimaud looked at the clock. It was hardly a quarter past 6. The escape was fixed to take place at 7 o'clock. The duke, in order to pass away another quarter of an hour, pretended to be reading something that interested him, and muttered that he wished they would allow him to finish his chapter. La Ramee went up to him and looked over his shoulder to see what sort of a book it was that had so singular an influence over the prisoner as to make him put off taking his dinner. It was Caesar's Commentaries, which La Ramee had lent him, contrary to the orders of the governor, and La Ramee resolved never again to disobey these injunctions. Meantime he uncorked the bottles and went to smell if the pie was good. At 6:30 the duke arose and said very gravely, "Certainly, Caesar was the greatest man of ancient times." "You think so?" "My lord," answered La Ramee,